Welcome to Queerly Speaking. I'm your host, Nat Jones, and together my wife and I will navigate the complex intersections of faith, identity, love, and resilience. In each episode, we'll share stories of heartbreak, healing, and hope from individuals who were told they didn't belong in the very spaces that shaped us. So welcome back to Queerly Speaking. Super excited this week. Obviously, we have my beautiful wife and comedic relief. And I'm also really thrilled to say that I have one of my childhood friends on the podcast today who at different points in our lives, we've been going to the same churches. We have multiple siblings. And so our siblings have been friends. Very intertwined in the community in which we grew up. And I am excited to introduce Rachel Weeks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, no, we're really excited. And like I was saying a little bit earlier, I'm really excited to hear your journey. And I am a little bit older. So by the time I think my situation, what do you want to call it? Like, I don't know, like the story. Yeah, my coming out or whatever, like near the church, all of that stuff. You were a little bit younger, but you watched all of that happen. But I haven't been able to actually hear your story. And so I'm really, really super excited. So first, if we can just start out, for everyone else, tell us a little bit about how you grew up, your family dynamics, and then let's start there.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I'm super excited. It's super cool to talk to you now that we're both adults and we're out, and it's a very cool experience. So I'm excited to be here. So I grew up in the same geographic area you did, and our families have known each other since before I was born. There's a baby book from when I was really little where my mom says, Rachel and Anna had fun splashing in the pool. I was like 2 years old. It's been a long time,
Yeah,
So
yes.
Our families have been intertwined for a long time. And I grew up in, South Georgia, just like you. And
yeehaw.
I
said yeehaw.
Yeehaw, indeed. Exactly.
Yes.
And lots of yeehaw down there. And so, very small, rural, agricultural community. I'm one of 7 kids. I'm the second oldest.
Wow.
Yep. No, I saw Tammy's face.
I'm sorry, I can't help it.
No, it's okay.
I intentionally did not tell her many details about your family because I was just wanted it to be very real.
Reaction is better. This is great.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you fall in birth order?
Second oldest.
Okay. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Second oldest. So, by the time my memory starts, I already had younger siblings. I don't remember not having younger siblings. And my sister who's under me in the lineup, she and I are like 21 months apart. So, I was really young when she was born. So I don't remember any time without her. And growing up, it was super normal for my mom to be pregnant and having kids, Yeah, she did it 7 times. The last time I was 12 years old. So I remember that really clearly. We grew up very, evangelical, charismatic, conservative, religious. Christianity was our faith and God and Jesus. It was the most important thing, and it was impressed upon me very early that there was nothing more important. And I was also homeschooled, just like Nat. So I know. So, as I'm sure she's mentioned to you before, very common in our community, lots of homeschoolers. And a lot of my friends were homeschoolers. As I got older, I knew friends who went to public school, private school, homeschooling, everything. But, growing up, it was mostly other homeschooled kids. I also grew up on a farm, my grandfather's farm, and it was really far out. I mean, the nearest grocery store is 30-minute drive away, and it was just very isolated in a lot of ways. So, my world was my family. my world was my siblings. I have 5 sisters and a brother, and they were my playmates and best friends and occasional enemies. And,
Yeah.
just growing up in, close quarters. But, we had a lot of fun together. We fought like siblings and kids do, but I have lots of happy memories of playing with my siblings and the stories we'd make up. And I mean, we were very imaginative play. We'd say, okay, we're going to write a story and then we're going to film it with our family video camera.
Love that.
So there's a lot of drama and costumes and things like that. Um, and I think as a function of that kind of isolation, my siblings and I were close out of necessity, but that was kind of the thing that just bolstered me all throughout my childhood and teenage years and now into my adult years as well. And our faith and striving to be godly and like Jesus and being a good Christian, I mean, that was the thing that I was impressed as a child as being the most important thing. And it did feel like quite a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I bet.
And I don't even think that maybe that was necessarily the intention, but it felt like a very heavy thing to carry for me as a kid. And something that I really resonated with that Nat talked about earlier was just that sort of that fear that would grip you. I really resonated with that. But my mom and dad wanted to homeschool us because they wanted to keep us away from the world. They didn't want us to be influenced in many of the ways that y'all have talked about. And they didn't want us to learn about evolution. They didn't want us to have sex education. And they, had a great wariness of and fear of the world. And I think education, especially in going to school, kind of represented for them the government taking over or a secular force raising your children instead of you, the godly parent. And I know that came from a place of wanting to protect us. But, I mean, homeschooling is imperfect, like any form of education, frankly. So, it it was just kind of something that was always in flux, I think. And, eventually as a teenager, I kind of was like, we had started to move away from some of the more fundamentalist aspects of our faith. And so as I became a teenager, it kind of felt more possible to go to college and kind of have this different sort of future than the one I had been imagining.
I can relate to this like so closely, right? And I'm curious from your point of view, when was the first time that you thought that your sexuality may even be different? Because I think the best way I know how to describe it when people ask me is there's like two stories in my head. There's the story of like my family and faith and all of these things, and I genuinely like you, and I still have a faith, but I'm talking more of like the specific faith. Then I believed it with my whole body, right? So then, but there's this other thing where it's like, but what's going on? Why do I want to be the husband? Why do I like it? It's like that was just like for me
from girls and what girls think.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah, no, I really relate to that because it was that very similar to that for me too. Like very committed and devoted. I wanted so badly to be, faithful and a good Christian girl in whatever ways I understood that to be as I was a child and growing up. But I kind of had that too of, there's my family and my faith and nothing is more important than that. And then there's these other things over here that do not align with that other story and that other part of me. And so, the first time I think I sensed it before I really acknowledged it in my head,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so I would say probably by the time I was like even 12 or 13, I think that I was kind of aware that I was different in some indefinable way. And I think I just kind of gradually grew to an awareness, especially as I became a teenager and started having, feelings for girls that I was like, this isn't just friendship. And I felt very concerned about that. Felt very wary of that. And I knew it was not an option.
Yeah.
Under no circumstances was that okay.
Right. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
So what's the age gap between the two of you? How old are you, Rachel?
I turned 32 on Monday. So
happy
birthday. Happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
And I'm turning 37 in June.
So 5 years.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked that, just getting into that, because I'm thinking like, okay, timeline wise, then if you're still in the church community, that's right around the same time, like 12, 13, you're getting these crushes. That lines up with 17, you're coming out, you're moving out.
Yeah,
like,
I guess
so are you, and I know you guys were close growing up and all that stuff, but obviously in more detail, like, were you seeing this? Like, how clear is your memory of seeing like, oh shit, like that's happening over there? And like, this is really, I mean, how, like, what kind of awareness did you have from that perspective?
Crystal clear.
Yeah.
I had no doubts about what might happen to me if I wasn't careful.
This is fascinating to me.
So heartbreaking.
It's fascinating.
Because you're the same age then as Anna, who we just had on, your sister. So
a little bit older, yeah. But
similarly.
Like 6 months or same year or whatever.
So then same conversations. I mean, something that you shared on the podcast that you've said with me that just like makes me irate beyond belief, which is pretty much everything, is the experience of like your younger siblings or younger friends getting that talk. Like, were you part of those talks? Like, you're still actively in the church where the pastor's like, well, Natalie.
I was not actively a part of that church at that point. Like, I wasn't attending the youth group.
Got it.
But my family was still very connected to that community. And so what I got was, what me and my siblings got was our own personalized sit down about it.
Okay.
So
I'm sure many families did.
I just want to say, and you don't have to keep this in here, but I just have to say that what they did to you, just generally the community, everything, that was some nasty work, and you did not deserve it.
I think
and
keep it in.
You know that, but I want you to hear it from
me. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was Anna's age, and I was watching all this happen, and my parents were talking to me about it, and it was not framed as if you were some bad, horrible person. It really wasn't. It was like it was an emergency, much like you've talked about with your own family's reaction. This is an emergency. And it did have a big impact on me. And I definitely had other friends as I was growing up who had really negative experiences, who were also either disowned or, relationships were really bad for a while, or any combination of experiences. So I think I just kind of, I do think that one was sort of formative for me in the way that I think it was for a lot of the kids in our kind of general age range and our community and everything. And it was definitely something even years later that I would talk about with other friends that I grew up with who have deconstructed and kind of moved away from all that stuff. And we were like, wow, that really impacted us. And of course it impacted you the most. It happened to you. But it was,
but it actually is fascinating, like hearing this from a different point of view. Because to be honest, like I came back, left shortly after that, and like did not want to re-engage with almost anyone, good or bad. I was like, I gotta get out of here.
New life.
Yeah. So it's really interesting hearing from like your point of view, and also it's like also heartbreaking. Like it wasn't just me, but it told a story to everyone in that community.
And it's sad because I think it almost reinforces people's behavior when they do that, because that was the intent, right? Like people were 10 toes down on ostracizing you to scare or intimidate people into following the rules. And they're like, oh, look, it worked for however many years. There's so many of, so I think that's just so sad. Like the takeaway from a lot of people is like, well, see, we did what we're supposed to do. And it's like, no, the takeaway is look at all the people that were hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So so you're 12, 13 around this time, right? And then you have other people in your life throughout your teenage years who have had a similar story, like you said. been disowned or pressure on family relationships and things like that. So what did this look like after? I mean, obviously it was formative for you, right? You're like, okay, not doing that. That's not an option amongst everything you're feeling internally. What happens after that for you? What do the next like several years look like?
Yeah. I think the next several years were a lot about me kind of grappling with my faith overall, not just sexuality, but just sort of my faith overall, the feelings and frustrations I had about the obvious hypocrisy I was seeing in our community and in, Christianity more widely, perhaps mainstream Christianity, if you want to call that, if you want to call it that. I just kind of felt like our religion and our faith, or at least the way we practiced it, had caused a lot of harm and pain, and I started to resent it a lot. And that was not something I shared openly with people because that also wasn't something that would have been accepted. A lot like what Anna talked about when she was on this episode. And so it was kind of almost like another way of, I don't know if I want to say another way of being in the closet, but in a way, sort of, because it wasn't something I felt like I could talk about even with close friends who all were also very sold out on this and completely, as you said, Tammy, 10 toes down. And, you know, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a Christian. I wasn't sure if I was one. I felt like I had kind of had this religion foisted upon me, and assigned to me. I'm Christian because I was born into a Christian family who practices it like this.
Right.
And so I was just feeling very disconnected from it, but very much pressured by it, and didn't really know. I couldn't picture a life without that. I couldn't picture a life without these principles and opinions and ideas and rules governing the way my life went. And so that led to a lot of frustration and anger and me just being like, I don't really know what to do with this.
Yeah.
And, over my teenage years, I had, more crushes on girls and feelings for girls and things that I like, just didn't really want to look at too hard or deal with. But by the time I was 17 or 18, I was kind of like, okay, internally, I had just acknowledged, I was like, okay, I like girls. And the way I framed it to myself was I like girls too, because there was no way in my mind I could ever, like at that point, I could not conceive of the men not being an option. It seemed like that just, even if I liked girls, I would have to get over it.
Yeah.
And so that was just really tough because here I am kind of knowing that I'm different and not sure how I feel about that, but not in love with the way that this religion is being practiced around me. And I don't really want to be involved in that. And I've never gotten to decide for myself at this point, what do I think about all of this? What do I think about God and Jesus and these, pillars of my life that I have adhered to? And so, I would say 18 to 20 was very confusing and difficult internally. I didn't talk about this to anyone.
Well, who would you talk about it to?
Right.
Yeah.
It was loud, but who would you talk to? No, seriously. And, I am really fortunate that I had like my sisters, even though I didn't tell them about this stuff until years later, I just always knew they had my back. And that's kind of something that's echoed from the time we were children to today. I just know that they have my back. And so even though I didn't talk to them about that stuff, it was a lot easier to talk to my siblings about frustrations with religion, with God, with all of this stuff. And we were kind of all of the same opinion on a lot of things. And so, I mean, I don't know why or how, but we all evolved, I think, in this area in some similar ways. Maybe not at the same time, certainly.
Right.
But I didn't feel like they were going to be angry with me or reject me specifically for the faith stuff, because I think that they were going through that too, and we could kind of talk about that with each other. But that was as we got, that was more around like 18, 19, when we're kind of starting to come into adulthood and think about these things for ourselves. And then by the time I was 20, I kind of just was like, okay, I can't really ignore this anymore. And it was 2 weeks before I was about to leave for college, because I'd been going to, I think, the same community college you went to.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love that. That's funny.
And I'm sorry, I just have to say, it's not funny, but when I know where you were walking when you're talking about walking to community college, and I'm just thinking of that road and picturing you walking along. That was brave.
Yeah.
So yeah, that community college.
Yeah.
It was, you know, fall 2013, and I was 2 weeks away from transferring to the school I eventually graduated from, a few states away, still in the South, but a few states north. And I kind of just had this internal war with myself where I was like, okay, you can't ignore this. This is not going to go away. And now you're leaving home for the first time. And this is the first time you won't be living with your family in your entire life. You will not be, you know, responsible on a daily basis for things in this home and the kids and so on and so forth. And you're going to have to decide how you want to be and what you want to do. And if this is going to be part of that, and if you can, what that might even look like, you know? And so once I got to my university, you know, it was, I think, in many ways a pretty big culture shock for me.
So big culture shock.
Yes, big culture shock. This feels funny now, but you know, at 20 years old, coming from our little town, I remember seeing so many people wearing leggings as pants. Not kidding. I was kind of like, what is going on?
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
I was a little scandalized by that. Not in a way of like, I was like, that's wrong, but I was like, you can do that? My God.
Oh my God. It's so funny.
Because, you know, the modesty stuff was so huge.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I mean, when I got there, I was still just, even if it wasn't things, I didn't really care about things like that. I didn't believe at that point that, you know, all these modesty standards that we had been handed and all of those different things, I didn't believe that, but I was still adhering to them because I didn't know anything else. So, you know, getting there was huge in terms of just my self-expression, what I want to wear, who I want to be. And, you know, I definitely didn't like dive into, you know, at my school, Greek life was a really big deal. I wasn't interested. That just didn't feel like something I really want. And I think also because, I mean, I had lots of friends in Greek life and it was great for them, but it's also a very straight sort of atmosphere in a lot of ways. And so I think I was just sort of like, well, I don't feel so totally comfortable there. In the same way I didn't feel super comfortable in my religious community. So, you know, over the course of those 3 years I had at my university, it was just a really exciting and healing time for me. I kind of feel like college was, I mean, it was definitely where I came into my own, which is what it is for a lot of people, of course. But, you know, I, for the first time, met gay people who were out. My advisor for my organization was a lesbian who was married to a woman, and I got to hold her baby after she had her. And that was like a huge moment for me. I was like,
that's a lot of things coming full circle.
Yeah. It showed me what a life like that could look like. And it showed me that, not only what a life like that would look like, but that there would be I could create a life where there would be people around me who would want to celebrate that with me.
Yeah. I just got goosebumps.
I know.
Yeah. Wow.
I know, that's major to see something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we literally did not have any queer representation.
No.
And if there was anything, it was very negative.
Yeah.
Very negative, or portrayed very negative. So wow. What like a special moment for you.
I know. And I think it's so nice to see, like, we talk about this all the time. And I love anyone being out and proud, really straight, gay, like, live your life, be yourself. Like, I want to see that from everyone. Do the absolute most. I want to see everyone being over the top. But it is so nice, I think, especially for you guys to see, like, the other side of it. And, like, we try to do this on the podcast. It's like, we're just like making dinner in the kitchen. We're just going to bed together. Like, you know, it's like nothing's like really crazy happening over here out of the normal. So I think just for you to see that, I'm sure was really impactful of like, oh, this is just, you know, when it's a marriage and love the same way that I knew it before. It's just two women. And like, oh, look, they're starting a family the same way that I know and love my own family. Like to be able to kind of put those together and realize like, oh, it's really not that taboo. I'm sure was really beneficial.
Mm.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, for it to just not be, like you said, taboo, and to see this couple who was living normal by whatever standard you would define that, a normal quote unquote life together.
Right.
And now I am with my long-term partner, and that's what we do. We make dinner and watch our shows and, hang out and go to bed,
Yeah.
and it's just, sometimes I'll say to my partner, younger Rachel would be so shocked by this right now in a good way.
Yeah, you say that too all the
You
time.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. So then you're having these experiences, right? For the first time you see like, and I want to say as well, in our community growing up, marriage was the goal.
Oh, yes. 100%. Don't think about anything else, actually.
Marriage is the goal. You don't have sex, you kiss dating goodbye. And yeah, there's only a couple people who are going to get that reference, but I will say on the positive end of that, of marriage and of relationships and of building, if there's a lot of emphasis on building a family, right? So I think it's seeing queer representation who's an individual is really powerful.
Mhm.
Seeing queer representation of a family dynamic, I feel like is like even more powerful. Because the way that it's like, the way that homosexuality is kind of casted is it's like, you're just sleeping with everyone all the time. You never settle down. You're just like sexually deviant, probably are possessed in some way. And you know what I mean? And so it's like, how powerful for you to be able to be able to like have a sneak peek into what your future could look like. I think that's honestly much more powerful than we can even put into words.
Yeah, I agree.
And the impact that probably had like on your heart and your future decisions. So you see this, and how long after that? Like what's the process like for you?
Lots of agita and panic. That was a big feature of it. I mean, I was kind of finally starting to see that I could create a life that looks like that. So I was like, okay, well, I can. What might I have to give up or sacrifice to do that? And at this point in my life, I wasn't worried really about my siblings' reactions, which I'm very lucky for. I mean, that's never a guarantee, of course, but my parents were still pretty, locked in to some of those baseline things, and I couldn't gauge them for a long time. I couldn't really tell what might happen or what the reaction might be. So I kind of go from, okay, this is something that I can accept about myself. This is something I can see as a possibility. I could have this life if I want, but what would happen if I chose it? And am I willing to do that? And I was thinking about all the stories of all the people who had, taken that risk and what had happened to them. And I kind of just had this feeling of I should wait until I feel like safe or secure. I don't think I understood what that meant at the time, but I kind of had this conviction that I deserved to figure out how I felt about my sexuality and what I wanted before I tried to help my family figure out how they felt about it.
100%.
Yeah. And so
What a gift to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Especially because, and I think you understand this, but being an older sibling in a larger family, and especially in this religious context, you are really enmeshed with your family, and that can be really good. Sometimes that can be not so good.
Yeah.
And so what they think and what they need feels paramount.
It does.
And so, I'm in college and I've got lots of friends of all kinds. And I kind of have my first really huge crush on a girl who was a friend of mine and lovely person. Nothing ever happened, but, great, great friend. And it really it wasn't anything I told her about. I didn't tell her that I had feelings. Because again, I just didn't feel ready. But my I think it was the end of junior year of college or the beginning of senior year, I kind of was like, I'm so sick of not talking about this openly. And I started telling my friends that I wasn't straight. I was like, I like girls. I don't really know what else that means for me, but I know this. All of my friends in college, of course, were just like so happy and overjoyed and like, oh my God, this is great.
Yeah.
And that's a great healing reaction to get as
For
well.
sure. Yeah, especially for the first reaction.
Yes, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, that was really smart of you, actually.
I know, I know.
I think I kind of knew that I would have to. I think I knew there were certain people who just were not going to be able to react happily
Yeah.
at first. And so, but yeah, for that to be the first reaction to be saying it out loud to someone it feels like a blessing for sure. Cause the first friend I ever told, she had told me about a year before that she was bi. And so I was like, okay, I'm safe here.
Yeah.
And this friend
Mhm.
was also a Christian.
Mm.
And so for us to have some shared beliefs or values or whatever, and then also to have this in common, I knew that I was talking to someone who was going to get it on a lot of levels. And from there, I started just telling the rest of my friends and getting more comfortable with it. And then I decided, I was like, okay, now that I've accepted this, I have to go out with a girl.
Yeah.
I can't wait
Definitely.
a second longer. And so, I did what everyone does. I got a dating app. And I mean, listen, the internet's what got us together. So yeah, and I went on a date with a really lovely person. She was great, but I woke up the next day and just about had a panic attack.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that just going on a date with a girl was going to have that impact on me.
Yeah.
And kind of activate all of this fear and anxiety and uncertainty. And I just really had a big freak out about it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I'm in my best friend from college. I'm in her car and we're going probably through the Starbucks drive through and I'm crying, sobbing.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm never going to feel okay with myself.
Mm.
And she just very gently was like, I think every day it's important to just ask ourselves, what's something I could do today to feel better about myself, accept myself more? What's something I could do right now to just do that?
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
then she goes, and I know this isn't a fun answer, but when you do that, one day you wake up and you go, I'm okay with myself.
Yeah. Wow.
And that was excellent advice. And she was right. And she's been
Yeah.
right about many things over the years. I love her.
Crazy profound advice.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think some of the fear stemmed from the most? Probably a combination of things, but was it the fear of losing your family? Was it the fear of really not being in like good standing with God? Was it apart from all of that? Then there's just like the world also accepting the queer community, right? Talk about levels, Jesus. So like what do you feel like that mainly stemmed from?
I think it was perhaps a little bit of each. I think it was always mostly focused on my family, my position in my family. Will my family still love me? Will my family still want to know me and be around me and celebrate my life? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Um, and I think I was specifically thinking about my parents
Yeah.
mostly. So there was that fear. And then it's so funny because even after all the deconstructing I had done by the time I was, at this point in college, I still definitely had some fear that like I'm still doing the wrong thing. And that was such a hard feeling to shake. And I think that's what I was crying. Yeah, powerful. I think that's why I was crying in my friend's car. I was like, am I ever going to be able to shake this?
Yeah.
Is it possible for me? I see people around me who could do it. But again, like you said, the world in general, whether it's super religious or not, is not always accepting of queer people. And so I think it was a combination of those things. It was like, does this mean I lose my parents or my family? Does this mean, am I doing something wrong? Am I doing something that's going to result in my, ultimate unhappiness because this is not God's best for
Right.
people, as I was told?
Right.
Um, I think it was all of those things. And then just my own frustration of like, but I don't think that. So why am I still scared?
Yeah. Like, why does I don't think that in my head, but why is this tape still playing? And whose
Yes.
voice is the tape?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do? What were some of the things that you did each day?
Some of the things I did, I think a big one was wearing the clothes I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I know that you obviously have talked about that. And I'm definitely more femme. Like I like jewelry and dresses and all that stuff. Like I had a great cover. Nobody guessed.
You kind of sound like
I
me a
don't think
little
so.
bit.
I would probably have to poll people to know for sure if anybody guessed, but I don't think. I think I had good cover. And so I was always very like, into like girly feminine stuff. And I think maybe that was another reason why I was sort of like, is it possible for me to be a lesbian? Because we just kind of were presented with this one idea of what that looks like. So wearing things regardless of what modesty standards I had been raised with and I was still kind of adhering to, that was a big part of it. And feeling more comfortable with my body, about my body, inside my body, and kind of just continuing to learn that my body is mine. It belongs to me. And I it's good as it is, and I'm good with it and in it, and there's nothing that I have to fix or punish. And that was kind of, a day in, day out, over time mindset shift, I think.
Totally.
And um I think too, just sort of talking more openly with my other friends who at my college who I also knew were queer, and just asking them questions like, how did you feel when you came out? How did you know? What were you scared of? Because what I found was that regardless of, I mean, I had a friend who was raised completely a-religious, just family didn't do a thing with religion of any kind. And she
Yeah.
was terrified to come out to her parents.
Yeah.
And finding that out was kind of, I mean, it's not good, but it was comforting in a way because I was like, okay, we all have a little bit of this experience. And
Right.
we all have to grapple with and contend with the fact that we are deviating from the path the world sets out for us, whatever that might
Yeah.
look like.
Yeah.
I was supposed to, my understanding as a child, I was supposed to grow up, marry a Christian man, have children, and homeschool them.
Oof.
That's what I'm supposed to do, as far as I understood. So becoming more comfortable with just understanding that I was just going to take a different path. And another big part of it is that in college, I reconnected with, I think I kind of built my faith for the first time because I just opened it up and looked at it and said, what do I think? And I decided, and I still feel this to this day, that God loves me very much, loves me exactly as I am. I am the way I am for a reason, for a purpose. And this is a part of my path. And my path is not bad.
Yeah.
I love that.
100%. It's also, to your credit, coming from the purity culture that we came from and all of that, like when you said that your body belongs to you, there may be people who don't understand like the depth and the work that takes to get there.
People.
Yeah, because yeah, because it I don't even know how to explain and accept that your body really belongs to God growing up, right? Your body belongs to God and
Not really yours.
yeah, it's not yours. And your duty is to keep it pure for the one day husband that you will be with and so on and so forth. And so that's why, I mean, that's like a really powerful statement. And I do think that it is, I don't know, just like important. I just wanted to notate that and give you like a credit for that because that's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
Thank you.
I'm curious, like how did you tell your siblings? How did you tell your family?
Yeah.
I actually do not know this story. And I'm like,
I'm
I've been
excited to tell you.
waiting.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
interested to hear.
Yeah. No, totally. So, I graduate college. I've told all my friends who I feel can hear that and handle that in a way that is good. Because at this point, I still have friends who are really bought in, friends I love. And I can't explain it any other way except there were a couple of friends where I was just like, I'm not going to tell you yet because you can't handle it, and I can't handle you not handling it.
Yeah.
And I also feel strongly that you are going to change because I know who you are.
Yeah.
And so there were friends that I kept, and I didn't tell them. I didn't talk about it, you know? And I was like, I may be wrong one day eventually, but I'm just not willing to completely give up on this relationship because I think it can be okay one day. But as far as my family went, first person I told was my sister, who's just under me, the one who's I'm 21 months apart with. And I told her over like a FaceTime call or Zoom or something. And this was right after I graduated college. And she cried and she was happy for me, kind of like Anna, like just started crying and was like, oh my God, like like you don't have to worry about anything. And we talked about, our family and our parents and everything. And we both were like, yeah, the rest of the siblings won't care. Like they'll care, but they won't in the sense of like be upset or, rejecting in any way. But I said, well, where do you think mom and dad are right now? Because I can't always tell. And her response was just sort of like, well, I think that they've come a long way, which is absolutely true. I can give them a ton of credit for that. I know obviously a lot of situations where parents have not grown and evolved along with their children. So my situation is unique in that. And she was just like, I think they need more time. I don't really know how much. I don't know exactly what they need, but I think that now maybe it's just not, I don't think they're quite ready. And so over the course of the next couple years, I just kind of individually talked to each of my siblings about it and told them, and each of them responded very positively. Most of them cried. It was very sweet. And I think that, I mean, they also grew up seeing all of this stuff. They grew up seeing what happened to you and what happened to our other friends. And so, they understood the stakes and they understood how hard it was for me to get here and get through all of this. And I remember one of my younger sisters said, I wish I could remember her exact words, but I told her and she was crying and she said, I will always protect you from people who want to hate you or something like that. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, just complete open armed acceptance from my siblings, which, not everybody gets, especially coming from our community. And I know obviously part of your story is that not all of them did, and so I know how big of a deal that is. It was a very big deal to me.
Also, the least of which you deserved.
Thank you.
That's the least. Right. Just so we're clear. The community is a whole nother thing, right? In which we grew up. But that is the least that you deserved. That's basic humanity. Yeah. But I'm proud of them. I am proud of them, but yes. Yeah.
Yes. No, I agree. It is the base level. It is the minimum people should expect. But I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I throughout these years, like I'm dating, I have a long-term relationship, I have some other shorter relationships. I feel good and confident in myself, and as anyone does when they start dating, I don't know about you. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know what to look for.
My God, no.
I don't think really anybody does, regardless of sexuality.
No,
but
no.
Just trying it all on, and then you're like, oh no, not that.
Yes, that was very much how it was for me. I was just, I dated some people who were great and I dated some people who weren't so great. And I think that that's just kind of how it goes for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it was actually when I had been in this relationship that I'm in now. Me and my partner have been together a little over 3 years. It might have been in the first year of our relationship. Time blurs together since the pandemic started. I have a hard time, honestly. But Catherine and I started dating officially in January of 2022. And I think that it was later that fall when I came out to my parents, because I knew that it was serious with them. And I knew that I wanted oh my gosh, I just got so tired of going home for holidays and just being like, not talking about it and not talking about my most of my life and what was really going on in it and most of me. And of course my siblings all knew,
Right.
but it was still, we weren't talking about it because obviously my parents didn't know. And
Also
so I
really
wrote,
impressive, like, how tight-lipped your siblings are
I know.
in that type of, like, family dynamic. I'm like, that's impressive, honestly.
we have what my mom once called closing ranks. I don't think it's intentional, but we just kind of are like, okay, this is as far as it goes. This is where the information stays. We've kind of always been that way.
That's great though. Yeah.
It is. It is. There's a lot of trust. So
It's
that's,
amazing.
and I think also because, when we were younger, I think we would kind of like tattle on each other because we're all little kids. And then as we got older, we were like, we don't do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It was great. So yeah, truly my siblings were very just like, mom's the word. But I wrote an email to my family, to my parents, and I was like, I don't want to tell you face to face. I don't want a live reaction. I don't want, because by this time I really believed ultimately it would be okay, even if it was a little tough. I was like, ultimately they will choose me because that is what they've shown me they do over and over.
Right.
I'm going to try and trust that. But I didn't want a live reaction because I'm like, just take care of your feelings, have whatever reaction you need to have. I just don't want to be there for it.
Better done in private.
Good for you for having even the way you chose like your pattern of who to tell and stuff, like you clearly did so much work on your sense of self to have, I guess it is kind of like self-preservation almost in a lack of things. It's like the wherewithal to protect, like I have put in so much work to get this and this life I'm happy with, but this is the next and kind of final step. However, for the sanctity of that, I need to take X, Y, and Z steps. I think I'm sure that took a lot of work, but sounds like a fantastic idea.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. It was very intentional. I think it had a lot to do again with having lived so much of the first 18 to 20 years of my life with and for my family. And I was like, this is just one part that I can't live for them. So I also didn't want to send a physical letter because I was like waiting for that to hit in the mail. Absolutely not. My anxiety can't handle
of that.
that.
Oh my gosh.
Terrible feeling. So I wasn't going to do that. So I was like, okay, email it is. And I just kind of wrote out, I still have it somewhere. I wrote it in like Google Docs or something. And I just kind of shared like, this is what it is. This is who I am. And this is a part of my life. And I was very honest in it. And I said, I have been scared that you will not accept me. I have been scared that you won't be okay with this. And I think I put something in there about like, take your time to process whatever you got to do. But I said something like, I hope because you understand what it is like to be rejected by your own parents that you won't do that here. And I send the email, immediately get into my car and drive 3 hours to my best friend's house. And I was like, whatever happens, I'm with Jamie. I'll be fine. And so, and I told my sisters, I texted them and I said, well, I sent an email coming out to mom and dad. I don't know what's going to happen. Godspeed. Because most of them were at the house. And I did this strategically because I knew that most of them were at the house and that whatever was going to happen, my siblings would first of all, they would tell me what happened. And then they would kind of be there to sort of help along if that was needed.
Off the ledge, maybe.
Yes. What I didn't know is that all of my siblings were at the Mexican restaurant in our town and they had $3 margaritas.
Mexico?
Not Old Mexico. It's the other one used to be Golden Corral.
Oh God, yeah. Yes. Okay. That is one thing I do know. My family loves Golden Corral.
Yeah.
Oh, listen. The rolls. Yeah.
But I see that for you guys. You got to take 52 fucking kids to dinner. It's like we're going to a buffet. Eat all you can because it's dinner for the next week.
Literally. So all of my siblings are a little buzzed on their half-price margaritas, and It's great. I didn't know that, but it honestly made it better. And then I get to my best friend's house and I have all these texts from my sisters. And so I open them and Hannah's like, my sister, she's like, I'm listening at the door. It was like eavesdropping for me. And she's like, everything's okay though. And I was like, okay, and I'm starting to calm down. And I kind of just walk into my best friend's house and I'm like, I just sent an email to my parents coming out to them. And she was like, oh my God, because she's known me forever. She's the one who gave me that advice,
Yeah.
that day that I was like freaking out. And I was like, I don't even want to look at my phone for a while. So I just kind of put it away. But I finally did check my email and my dad had replied and he said, Dear Rachel, I am all in.
Oh my God.
And that was the first line of his reply. And then he just went on to say, like, I love you so much. This doesn't change anything. And my mom also replied and said, I mean, I have all these emails. These are the parts I remember. But she said, I will love anyone you love.
Wow.
And it's a reaction that when I read it, I was like, this is what I needed. And it's what I always worried I might not get.
Mm.
Wow.
Wow. What a fantastic response, first of all. A powerful opening. Great job on your dad.
He's a writer.
Oh,
and you can tell.
That makes sense. Yeah, that tracks. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
And it was kind of like this reassurance of like, I think I did right by myself to wait until this could happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
for sure.
If I had done that 5-10 years earlier, I don't know that I would. I don't know. Maybe I would have. Maybe I didn't give them enough credit for too long. I don't know. I just knew what I knew at the time and felt what I felt at the time.
Yeah.
But I do know that if I had not waited, I don't know if I would have gotten that reaction.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you baby someone? Obviously, you had a similar experience, and you know her family and things like that. You're hearing this story for the first time. Like in your mind, what are you thinking? Like is going to happen?
I know. I want to know.
Because I don't know them. I immediately
speechless, just honestly
cried. I've never even met these people. The woman was too stunned to speak.
I will say that from far away, I had the impression that I didn't know all the details, but I at least had the impression that you were still part of the family.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know to what level. I didn't know. I mean, to hear your mom and your dad say that, again, I'm just going to say this so we all level set. Least that you deserve. Given the situation, I'm shocked.
I was.
Yeah, because I'm like, and what inner work did they do along the way to get to the place where they could so quickly say, not only like there's two things happening in their responses. Not only are they saying that we love you and you're still in, not only you're in, but your expression of your family is also in. I'm like,
oh, babe.
Like, wow. So what's that like? What is it like now? I mean, and I mean that genuinely. I mean, like, so you mean like birthdays, holidays, like
they met your partner?
Like, it's like real.
It's real. Well, here's the thing. The next day, my mom calls me And she says, we
I just looked up to look at you, and Nat's like, I just can't. And again, it's so good to hear this. And I mean, literally crying for you. And I met you like 10 minutes before we started this, and I do think it's so incredible, obviously, but I'm always shocked. Like I said this before we started, it's like nice for you to get to talk to someone who knows like what the fuck you're talking about. Like I've only really seen these reactions, which is obviously such a whatever, that's a privilege in and of itself, but it's just so nice to hear this. But then I just can't help but laugh because I'm crying like, that's so sweet. And you're like, what, like,
and what next?
yeah, exactly. Like, so, so shocked. But anyway. So she
well, let me just say, because this is a big deal.
For sure.
Because not only does it impact Rach and her family, it then, what are all of her parents' friends, their friends, gonna say to them? Other people in the community. It's like, there's a lot of layers. Not that should ever be more important. But let's not for one second like think that they wouldn't have at least some level of negative impact that they would shoulder as well. Mm-hmm. Worth the cost. They should do it no matter what. That is not what I'm saying. I just mean.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because, I can give my parents a ton of credit for the ways that they have continued to choose loving us over the opinions of people in their community.
Yeah.
And I mean, one example I can give you is that I was really involved with my university's feminist organization when I was in college.
I remember this.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were following that, but that was uncomfortable. But my mom one time mentioned to me that someone had said something to her about something I posted on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And she was just sort of like, so? To the person. And I don't think that person was expecting that. And, I also did a lot of stuff in college around, sexual violence prevention and awareness. And that's something that's really near and dear to my family's heart. And so I think that was something that we all, that was something that I was very passionate about and still am, of course. And, something that I was able to talk to my mom about a lot. And so she was excited by that and liked that a lot. So I think, even though it was a little kind of like, she's like, I'm not really sure what all of this is initially, I didn't have some terrible pushback on that. And so I do, growth with both of my parents to just be as open as possible. And, being curious about what I thought and everything. So even before I come out to them, we have this precedent that's been set of, I may have, these opinions and I may have these beliefs and I'm not afraid of them and they may not align with some of the things in our community and how we have, been taught and everything. But my parents are curious instead of just sort of automatically dismissive, which, as we've said, baseline. However, incredible for this context.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Definitely.
So that was a huge deal. But the day after I sent that email, my mom called and she invited Catherine to come to Thanksgiving. Yeah.
No, so nice.
Wow.
And then I cried. And then
I was going to ask, like, were you like, how did you even?
I was just on the phone like, that's so nice. I didn't really know what to say.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And what was it like going? I have so many questions. Like, so going to your house for the first time, right? You've been raised a certain way your whole life. I've tried to picture this many times. I can't really picture it. But like for you, like you walk in, do you hold her hand? Do you even touch each other? Like, what is that like?
We talked about that because Catherine was like, should I? it was very, and I kind of go, I don't know. I thought, I don't know. I thought maybe we'd have to have like conversations, and they're just like, anyway, do they want to come for Thanksgiving? And so I definitely didn't give them enough credit there, which is fine. But I was just sort of still, I was surprised by their reaction, I think.
Right.
And so I think what I told Catherine, I was like, initially they know we're dating. They know who you are. They want you here. You're invited. I think it's perfectly okay for us to hold hands. I think it's perfectly okay for us we're a couple. They know that.
Mm.
I think initially I was sort of like, maybe let's just not kiss in front of people just for the first part, so I can kind of gauge how this feels just for me and for you.
Yeah.
But again, I can give them a lot of credit for the fact that they were really welcoming, excited to meet Catherine, wanted to get to know her, wanted to talk to her, and were just, just treated her like she was there and a part of the whole thing,
Wow.
And so, of course, that made me feel more comfortable.
Mhm.
It did, I mean, it did intimidate me at first. It intimidated Catherine.
Well, not only, it's
When
like you're taking someone home, right, for the holidays.
Right, that's already stressful.
It's a big deal.
Also, you have a massive family.
Right.
You're like, she could get jumped by a number of siblings. You know what I mean?
This Thanksgiving.
And then on top of that, you've just come out to your Christian conservative family, and she's like, I have to say, Catherine, badass, because she showed up shortly after this with all these dynamics, and she's like, yes, I am the one. Oh my God.
This actually reminds me of a moment where Catherine, I don't know if we were talking about this specifically, but Catherine was doing something for me, and I was like upset about something, and I was like, wow, you really love me. And Catherine looks at me and goes, yeah. Like, did you not notice?
So sweet.
So very, very sweet. Catherine was very brave through the whole thing because, at this point, they have met some of my siblings over FaceTime. But, at this point, we're over here on the West Coast. It's not like, we can hang out with my siblings in person easily.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, walking into my house, you're meeting 8 people.
Wow.
With my parents and 6 siblings. And so I was like, listen, it's overwhelming. It's loud. There's a lot going on, but everybody's excited to see you. And also, one really cool feature of my family is that if you want some time to yourself, you can just have it. Nobody's going to be upset. No, like, you don't have to be in the fray all the time, so that, and so I told Catherine, I was like, you don't have to, like, it's going to be okay. And what's really funny though is that when I was watching Catherine's location, because I was already at my parents' house, and I was watching Catherine's location, I knew they were going to be here any second. And I look out the window from upstairs, and I see my dad standing in the driveway, and I think, oh no, because he's gonna, not because my dad was gonna do anything bad or in any way, but I was just like, Catherine driving in and my dad's right there could feel a little
that's a
intimidating.
lot.
Yeah.
So I'm like running downstairs and I don't make it in time. And Catherine is like parking, and like I hear them talking to my dad and being like, hi, it's so nice to meet you. And my dad, he's so sweet. Like it's kind of his way of greeting guests when they come, and he was really excited to meet them. And so it was just really, really cute. But I did feel bad that I kind of missed that window, just because, when you meet a partner's parent, it's nice to have them with you.
Right.
But it was super sweet. And Catherine was definitely like, okay, well, I ripped the Band-Aid off there. I feel nervous.
First of all, just to give them like so much credit for showing up alone. I would have been like, if I'm my flights, you're coming to the airport. Like, I don't even care. I don't know. I could have never done that. So that's incredible. I think like when you actually met my mom without me, I was at work and my mom came, and you had met my sister before. So you'd go to the airport, and my mom's like, whatever. She's obsessed with us, but she's a little bit kooky. And I was just thinking like, and that was pretty early. I mean, maybe we'd been dating 6 months, like not super long. And I just was thinking at work all day, like, if she shows up to pick me up after this, like, it's going to be a miracle. Like, if she makes it through this lunch, God only knows where they're even at right now. Like, and she
Del
really,
Taco.
yeah, Del Taco.
Oh,
So
good.
I know my sister's going to listen to this and she's going to be like, that place is so good. I'm like, it's not.
Not.
And I was just like, oh my God, like, this is, because you're not there to field anything. So I can only imagine what you're thinking. Like, you're coming down the stairs, they're already talking, and you're like, oh God, okay, the ship has left the harbor. Like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
but
that's out of my hands now. I was like, all right, it happened. Here we are.
Yeah. Also kind of sweet to see that your dad is like so eager to have, it's like in the normalcy of it, like you're saying, this is just how your dad greets any guest. Like, to also have that, like, it's not like your whole family's standing there to scare anyone off. It's just like, this is what we do. Like, this is the respectful come in for dinner. So I love that.
Yeah.
And what are like their family dynamics?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, much smaller family than mine. Well, 2 kids.
2. So, it's a good size, honey. Yes. 2.
Okay.
2 is a good size. I agree. I mean, I love being a part of a big family. I don't think I myself would have 7 kids, but I love being a part of a big family.
Good on your.
Yeah. So Catherine's family of 4, parents and my brother, and grew up Catholic, but not in a way of very super involved and sold out and devout Catholic, sort of devout Christian kind of thing. They were much more, I guess, culturally. So, Catherine went to Catholic school for a while, went to Episcopalian school for a while. So it was a part of their life. But she wasn't, Catholicism is so different from evangelical and Protestant traditions. And we emphasize a personal relationship with Jesus. That's a huge part of it, right? And that's not how Catholicism works. So it's very much, I love to tease Catherine that I just love to tease Catherine. I'm like, well, you worship idols, which is not something I actually think. It's not something I actually believe, but I love to just give her, I love to tease her about all the things that we were told about Catholics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like to say that we're healing the Catholic Protestant divide with our relationship.
I love that.
That's awesome.
Breaking down barriers.
Yes, breaking down barriers. So yeah, an awareness of church and religion, went to church on the major holidays. I'd never been to a Catholic church. And so, Catherine one day told me, yeah, well, if it's a good priest, mass is 40 minutes. And I said, 40 minutes? That's not so bad.
Yeah.
Because I'm more accustomed to, I think in the churches we grew up in, church ends when it ends, which can be tiring. But, Catherine definitely grew up with, a lot of similar messages just because the world is homophobic or, society is homophobic. So it came in different forms. But I think that Catherine had many of the same fears I did about rejection from family for being anything other than straight. So, we definitely share those experiences in common and kind of having to come to terms with ourselves, and had kind of a similar journey in that, Catherine initially came out as bi, and that was great for them for a time and felt good. And I also identified as that for a time. And I want to make it very clear that I know and believe bisexual people exist. I do not believe it was just a stop along the way. I think it was my understanding of myself at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Now, Catherine and I both are like, yeah, we're lesbians. We're not attracted to men. This is just who we are. But, it was an important part of it for us,
Definitely.
both individually.
For sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think, Catherine had, and I'm relaying what Catherine has told me, of course, they would know many more details, but of how they felt and everything. But when she came out to her dad, she was the most concerned because he is probably the most religious in the family. And Catherine was going through a really hard time when she came out to him, but for some other reasons. And told me, it was like, we're already kind of at rock bottom here, so I'm just going to come out to him.
Jeez.
And it went totally fine. And he was just like, I love you, it's all going to be fine. And Catherine's parents are also divorced. And I think that changed the family dynamic a ton. And in a way, I think it's lovely because, they are the kind of people who could get divorced and still maintain a relationship and a family.
Yeah.
Does not always happen, obviously.
Yeah.
They're both excellent people. I love them. They love me. They love me with open arms. They're fantastic people.
Oh, okay. So they still have relationships as well.
Yes.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
It's really great.
It's really beautiful.
I was just thinking, we hadn't gotten to that part of the story. And I'm thinking, first of all, like I would be scared to walk into like a Thanksgiving that big. I'd be like, what am I supposed to like do with all these people, no matter the dynamic? So I was just curious if Catherine had an also additional layer of, I think that does matter what you've experienced, right? Like I walk into rooms, I'm not really that intimidated usually because I have been fortunate enough to always have had a positive experience really with the way people receive me in most things, but specifically my sexuality, I've not really experienced any negativity, but I feel like you have a little bit more, I just think when we go to weddings and stuff, and it always luckily in your adult life turns out well, but obviously rightfully so, you kind of go in with an additional layer of defense. So I was just curious if that was playing a part in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I was so cognizant of how intimidating that was. Even when I have just brought friends to meet my family, I'm like, this is a lot.
Yeah.
And we like to stay up really late, and you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah.
So, definitely try to prepare people.
For sure.
There was one thing recently, this was just in January when we were visiting my family, and my little brother was born on New Year's Day. So he's a New Year's baby.
Yeah.
And so we were, opening presents and everything. And I could just feel Catherine kind of shift next to me. And I was like, I forgot to prepare you for Southern gift opening culture.
Oh,
because at least in my family, it's a pretty slow process. You open a gift and you admire it and you talk about it and you thank the giver. I mean, it's just like this whole thing. I think that's similar to how Catherine felt.
And listen, I love attention. I'm not shy to that in any way, but I'm like the gift giving, like even at baby showers, I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, let's get to the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. So that was pretty funny because, Catherine is from Florida, but their parents are from New York and New Jersey. So culturally, they're a very northern family. So my family is, born and raised South Georgia. That's where my family has been for generations. And so, I've got a lot of roots there. My family has a church, which people are like, okay, yeah, the church your family went to. I said, no. It is our church that our ancestors built before the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, deep, deep roots in that area. So, culturally, there's a lot of differences. And we both grew up in small towns, but our small towns are different.
Right.
Yeah.
Culturally in a lot of ways. And so, I think visiting my town and visiting my family it gives a clearer picture of the environment and what circumstances were and what things felt like for me. And the same when I went to visit Catherine's hometown. So that was a cool experience for both of us, I think.
For sure.
Did you take them to Old Mexico?
I did. We absolutely went there.
That's where my love for queso started.
I can't imagine what the Mexican food is like. Being from Arizona,
really
I'm like,
good.
what is the Mexican food in Georgia?
No, queso.
The queso can't be beat. I miss it today.
I think we should go to Mexican for lunch, but that's a topic for another time. But I wanted to ask, speaking of when you were saying your family's church, as much as you're comfortable saying, like religious status of your family as of now, like are your parents still involved in church? Do they still identify as Christian? Like what's kind of the overall vibe there?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. Still Christian, I would say. As far as I know, and as my siblings and I talk about it, we all still identify as Christians. Only a couple of us attend church, and we kind of just do it on our own terms. My older sister has a church in California that she loves to go to, but again, not a super conservative, it's a very, liberal, to use the dreaded word, sort of church. And then my parents go to a church in our town that's a completely different denomination than what we were raised with and what they were raised with. My dad was raised Methodist and my mom was raised Baptist, and now they're going to Anglican church. I don't know if I said that right. I think I did.
Anglican.
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 Don't ask me.
It's a very hard word to say. That's interesting.
Yeah. And it's more of the high church, with the liturgy, and so different than what we grew up with. And they have just a really good experience there, and they have good friends from there. I know other queer people who attend that church. As far as I'm aware, it's a really good environment. And it's been a lovely thing for my parents and my younger siblings to experience together, I think, after a long time of not being involved in that kind of thing for a variety of reasons.
Right.
But I think faith is really important to all of us. I think that we have also just given each other, I mean, and this is sometimes rare, but we've just given each other permission to explore and define faith for ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, my little brother for a time, and I think this made me sad because I think he was nervous to tell me. For a time, he kind of more identified as agnostic. And when he told me, I kind of had this feeling, I was like, oh, he's nervous right now.
Oh.
And then I said, you know, it's great to ask questions. I think you should always ask questions. And I'm really proud of you for thinking through this yourself.
Yeah.
And I could just see him kind of be like, he just maybe was kind of worried about that. And now he, some years later, he's like, I've decided I'm a Christian and I like this. And I'm like, that's great. You decided for yourself. That's wonderful. And so he goes to the same church as my parents and has a real good relationship with people there. So, I mean, it's frankly better than it ever was because, growing up in these churches and religious communities with lots of rules and lots of places where you can kind of fall off the wagon if you're not very careful, it makes you police yourself, it makes you police others, and it doesn't foster the best relationships, in my opinion. So
no, fully agree. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, ask that. And I love to hear that response because I think like we talked about earlier with, how normal we are in our relationships or the things we do. I feel like that's a stereotype that people often say, like when those things come hand in hand, I think people would quickly assume, oh, you've come out and you're proud, you must not be religious anymore. Or your parents are accepting, they must have left the church. And it's like, no, still like, once again, it's like not, those don't have to live separate. I think that's a common, and I think they do live separate for a lot of people. And that's also fine if you chose, you decide that you don't believe in that, or sometimes maybe it's too painful to even explore. Obviously everyone can be on their own journey, but I just think it's nice to hear, that's a good example of your parents. It's like, they're still active in church and they're still exploring their faith, but they're like, you just said you're visiting again, like you're obviously actively in their lifestyle. And it sounds like they really support you in your relationship. So I just think that kind of representation is important.
For sure. Do you think there's still people in our hometown that are queer that haven't come out?
Yes.
Do
you?
Yes. What would you
talk off mic about that?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Oh,
it's a good one.
That's a very good one. You're okay. That would be the first thing. You're not bad. And it's also okay if you just can't address this right now. But when you do, there's people waiting for you with open arms.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
It's been really fun talking to you.
It's been really fun talking to y'all.
I know, this is great.
And yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you for listening. And thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Like, I feel really lucky to get to tell this story to the both of you. I mean, obviously, Nat, you have a lot of context because you've known my family for a long time. And as you said, Tami, we met 10 minutes before this happened.
Right. But I love it.
I feel like I'm like, it's Tami because I've been listening to the podcast. So I also just need to tell you, you're very funny and you get credit for that.
Thank you. I asked her before, I'm like, she does listen, right? Because otherwise if I say something, she might be like, wow, your wife's kind of a bitch.
No, you're very funny. I think the first one was early on and you said, I never read the Bible. I heard it was scary. I laughed out loud because I was like, it is. You don't need to go there.
Yeah, stay away from Revelation.
No,
yeah. It's a poem. It was a dream.
Yeah.
So,
but no, it has been so fun to get to know you. And it's always fun, it's nice to get to know people kind of from your life before I knew you and just to hear, and who doesn't love hearing about success story or, whatever, like someone just living their truth and then to have other layers of happiness. So I'm really happy for you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Seriously. It's just been absolutely lovely and so wonderful to finally catch up with you after all these years, Nat. And so good to meet you, Tami.
Yeah,
and
you too.